Welcome back to Close Up, and we continue our discussion of the crisis of addiction specific to opioids, turning to how some of these drugs enter the U.S. And it may surprise you to learn that a major supply line of fentanyl is the Postal Service. With us to talk about that, former Homeland Security Director and Pennsylvania Governor Tom Ridge. Good to see you, sir. Thank you for joining us. Obviously, the crisis of addiction is spreading across the country like wildfire. I'm interested to learn, though, first, how and why did you get involved with this?
Well, part of it goes to my experience way back as a young lawyer, both as a prosecutor and a defense attorney. I saw how corrosive the impact is drugs in individuals and on families in a community. Secretary of Homeland Security, we tried to close gaps and vulnerabilities that endangered America's families and communities. And frankly, this drug overdose, opioid overdoses over the past couple of years has escalated. And when they asked me to get involved to talk about this vulnerability and to close the gap, I said, sign me up, happy to do it.
And more the overdose deaths are related not so much to the heroin or the prescription drugs, but rather fentanyl. And a lot of people might be surprised to learn that a lot of this is coming directly through the mail. How did we find this out, and what can we do about it?
You know, Josh, first of all, I want to thank you for raising this issue. You know, when I was Secretary of Homeland Security, we worried about people coming across the border to do us harm, and now we've got drugs coming across the border that are killing literally hundreds, if not thousands of people a year. Put it in perspective, in 2015, the Center for Disease Control said the overall overdose in the United States killed more people than gun violence. And you narrow that down, and we're discovering there's more and more illegal drugs, synthetically manufactured fentanyl that you referred to, coming in through a loophole primarily from China. And it's the focus of this particular organization. And as President Trump, then candidate Trump, said in your own state, it's time we close the loophole that's been created within the Postal Service to close the door to the illegal drugs coming in from China.
So how do we do that, Governor?
Well, the way it's going to be done is you have a piece of legislation now, sponsored, bipartisan. You know, there's a lot of acrimony in this town right now, but it does seem to be an issue that both Republicans and Democrats agree on. Senator Rob Portman, your newly elected Senator Hassan are co-sponsors of a bill that would actually close a loophole. And the loophole is this. We need to require all packages that are sent through foreign postal services, and this is the loophole. These packages can come into the United States without providing any of the information that is required by the federal government if you sent the packages in by a private express carrier. We need to have the name and the address, who's sending it, where's it going, what's the content, what's the weight, what's the number of pieces, and frankly, right now there are some sophisticated algorithms. We can take a look at that data before they send it to us and pull it aside and check it. And we think this is a loophole that has to be changed, and then we're going to have to get the Postal Service to enforce it. Let's change the law. Let's get the president to sign it, and he said he would when he was in New Hampshire, and then we get the Postal Service to enforce it.
Sure. A lot of people were under the impression here in New Hampshire that fentanyl was basically cooked up inside of labs in the Northeast. Is it fentanyl that is coming through the mail, or is it the ingredients that become fentanyl once it gets here, or both?
I think it's a good question. Let's be sure not all these synthetically created fentanyls coming from China, but much of it comes in ingredient form and in pill form. And so either way, we need, again, it's not going to eliminate all opioid overdoses, but it is going to substantially reduce the ability in the global marketplace and the ease with which people can get on the internet and just order it. So the fact of the matter is, we have to do that at the same time we're combating it domestically, because if we close the door, close the loopholes here in the States and people getting access to it, they'll just go to these foreign sources. So it's one of the most important first steps we can take, hopefully, to reduce the number of overdose deaths.
And I want to focus in on the word that you just used, sources there. We talk about policing it through the mail and detecting it coming in. Obviously, the way to stop it from being put in the mail to begin with is going to the source. We talk about China. Is there any dialogue at all going on, given the seriousness of this issue with a government that's obviously not one of the most friendliest when it comes to the U.S.?
Well, Josh, you certainly hope so. There have been enough public comments, both from the President Obama's administration and recently from President Trump's administration, that I'm sure has been noticed by the Chinese government. Whether or not they are knowledgeable of every factory in China is highly unlikely, but they should not be confused about this message. We may argue about trade, we may argue about foreign currency exchanges, we may argue about foreign policy. There is no argument. We want these factories closed down, and if you're not going to do it, we're going to make it a lot more difficult for them to ship these toxic drugs, this evil, into our country by closing that extraordinary loophole. I mean, literally, you can send a package from 190 plus postal services from other countries, and the sender doesn't have to give us the same information as they'd have to give it if they were sending it through a private carrier. It's a massive loophole. We got to close it.
And it might be occurring to some of our viewers right now that when we talk about this loophole, obviously we're talking about it in the context of the crisis of addiction and fentanyl. But is there a possibility that this loophole could also be exploited for other substances that could potentially be, harmful when it comes to our national security?
Well, Josh, I mean, again, you've really drilled down deep into this. It's not just the illegal drugs, contraband. Frankly, in the world of e-commerce, which is global, there are probably packages coming into this country that there are import duties that are not being paid. So it's a potential source of revenue for the Treasury. That's one focus. Contraband is another focus, and these illicit drugs. So there's many, many reasons for this country to close, to make it far more difficult for people to abuse our postal system. And as I said before, one of the best ways to do it right now is close a loophole.
Yeah, I want to ask you, sir, and I'm not going to get into the politics of the current president, but you did bring up the STOP Act,
Nope.
Senator Portman's bill, along with Senator Hassan. Do you believe in the discussions that you've had in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere that there is a recognition on the part of the federal government, specific to this administration, that this is a problem that needs to be dealt with and dealt with quickly?
Well, unfortunately, I believe it is a problem that is recognized on both sides of the aisle. It is a problem that, you've had, I think, in 2015, 400 deaths in a state like Pennsylvania, my home state. In 2015-16, I think nearly 1,000. And so this problem is not unique. It's not unique to New Hampshire. Every senator and every congressman, or just about every congressman, has experienced the tragedy associated with these unfortunate deaths. And it's around those tragedies that we think we'll be able to build a pretty strong, immediate consensus to drive the legislation forward. There are going to be hearings. I'm quite confident that we're going to do very well up on the Hill. And then clearly the president has made that commitment in New Hampshire. And as we've seen over the past couple of weeks, he's tried to follow up on a lot of the promises. And this might be one of the easiest promises he can follow up on. He said, I'm going to close the loophole. And we hope Congress will send him the bill so we can do just that.
One more question for you, sir. As we pointed out, you're the first Secretary of Homeland Security post 9/11. Talk about the emergence of this problem. I mean, was this an issue that was detected 10, 15 years ago with these kinds of drugs coming across, or is this something that just kind of exploded on the scene?
When I first became Secretary of Homeland Security, this, in terms of all the communications that I had to deal with, the gaps and the vulnerabilities we were talking about as a country, this was not on the radar screen. This was not, I mean, obviously we were worried about the illegal importation of drugs and contraband and the like, but this has really exploded on the scene, the word you used, but I think it's true, over the past 2 or 3 years. And what is more disconcerting is it seems to be accelerating every year. There's another 50% or 80% or 100% increase in the number of deaths associated with drug overdose, and I suspect proportionally, we're going to see more and more of those drugs coming in from the e-commerce, ordering it on the dark web, and primarily getting it from manufacturers in China.
Well, former Homeland Security Director, former Pennsylvania governor, but Governor Ridge, certainly the work you're doing right now, no less important. Thank you very much for your time today.
Nice talking with you, Josh. Best wishes to you. Thank you.
All right.